Everybody. Welcome back to SaaS Founder Stories. Today I have Danielle Uche with Tiny, and she is going to tell us a little bit about what she does. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So it's TinType. Um, so
TinType.
TinType is I don't know if people know, but it's a very old camera, vintage camera that was used back in the day. Usually works with like negatives and pictures are usually black and white. So TinType is a software. So it's a cloud-based software that allows users, which are creative teams, to work in sync with their teams without large downloads. So the product in itself is we're basically just starting it. The MVP is going to be out next month. We have I came up with this idea in early 2022 because I was working on a project with some people, always been ambitious, always been looking for something to do in the creative space. Two of my biggest obsessions are computers and art. And those are the two things I was trying to find a way to blend. So I jumped into a bunch of things, did a bunch of things. Been doing freelance design and animation for about 6 years since I was in college, but I didn't want to have an agency or a design company as an end goal. So because of that, I was always thinking, what product am I going to build? And of course, so many things came up, and I worked on a project with some people who it wasn't the best, and I ended up drawing, and this was like illustrating a bunch of characters. So the project we're working on was whenever that whole NFT thing came up, and we were gonna make 700 characters. So out of those 700, a good 300 of them I drew by hand over 6 months,
Wow.
and then the rest of them were duplicated with code and all. And the project didn't end up working out because I wasn't doing it with the best people. And that kind of because there was a fear to go out and do things on my own. Again, young to not having the money to go do things, and also still trying to find my footing just in general because I had graduated like a year before that project started from college. And I moved to LA from Philadelphia because I thought I had to be in LA. And I was just thinking, like, what am I gonna do? Because graduated during COVID, no job. I got a job after a couple months of hustling. It was an internship, didn't end up working out the way I wanted it to work out. Then I started doing freelance. And whenever I started TinType, it was because I said that I wasn't ever going to be in a situation where I was drawing that many characters on my own again. So that was initially the idea, and I was thinking of the lack of stock assets that are there. I was thinking of how large files can be in the creative industry just in general, and I'm like, how do we solve it? So the product evolved from being something that was supposed to be a stock. It's a redefining the idea of stock websites to becoming a project management software for creative teams specifically. And the main issue that we're trying to solve is the issue of large downloads and assets because creatives usually make and use large assets. So, me being in animation, if I ever created anything in Blender, thank God if it doesn't get to 1 gigabyte in 2 hours. Same thing in Photoshop. If you are using artboards in Photoshop, you would very quickly get to 2 gigabytes in four artboards, depending on how heavy the design is. So the idea is how do you create a situation that would organize the way creative teams do work and also have that communication piece. So TinType is basically it's as easy as create a project thread. The communication is on one side, the assets on the other side, and the assets are basically files that you'd upload. And the idea is click on the file, and if you have a plugin on your software, you're able to open the file directly from TinType. And you open it, do what you have to do, save it, and it updates as the most updated version. So that way, you don't have to download so many large files and have all of that. You can literally upload the file when it's empty, do the work, and it's updating on TinType, and you can store it on TinType for as long as you can. So that's what TinType is. Um, I don't know if that was complicated or straight to the point.
No, that was awesome. Thank you. That was really good. Cool, man. So
Mhm.
for you, who's your ideal customer? Who are you chasing?
Creative teams. So the idea of creative teams is the creative industry in general are, you think about architects, they're people that use CAD. You can find people that do interior design. Usually we work with architects, we work with people that do CAD. There's animation companies, production companies, people that do audio production, video production, photo editing, video editing. These are all creatives who use software. So I went to SCAD for my master's, and SCAD is a creative career university. And it opened my eyes to see the many things that creatives can actually turn into career. Where I come from, I was born here, but I was raised in Lagos, family Nigerian. So they just tell you if you're an artist, you're going to be broke. So you don't know that there's a career outside of it. And with me, being somebody who came from a family where computers was a thing, I always loved computers and I always loved art. So finding a way to see how art could also make an impact in the internet age as much as science does. Because now we know how people could use logic and coding to create apps. So it's needed everywhere. So
Yeah.
how do we create a way for people to be able to use art? Or it's something that is popular, but I think it's being overlooked and it's also being stamped on and it's not being talked about as much. So it's how do we have art, basically computer art, make an impact in the internet age?
So for you, what's the biggest challenge that you overcame in the last 6 months that you want to share with the SaaS community so they can learn from it?
So the biggest challenge, I would say, one, raising funds because I'm young, and also being in the industry that it is. So the computer art industry, we hear about computer science all the time. Computer art is a thing. Uh, People would talk about it, but not as it's not as popular as computer science is. If I said I was building a payment portal software, I probably would have raised money a couple years ago, or even a couple months ago. Or if I said I was just jumping on the AI bandwagon and building something for AI, it would have been easier. But the question that I've always asked myself is, why is Adobe the way that it is? It's like Adobe usually underground by companies so that they can maintain the computer art space, but Adobe is doesn't have any large major competition because the computer art space is not talked about enough, and it's not popular enough for people to even say, okay, this is something that can make an impact past this spectrum. So, one, explaining that to people, explaining that to investors, and explaining that to people enough for them to understand it, and also being younger and trying to convince people that, hey, if you give me $1 million, I'm not going to throw it away and go to Ibiza and party for 1 year. Actually use it to do something. So that would be it.
So how have you been doing it? What have you been doing to solve that and that you want to share?
So one thing I did come up with recently, because I know that when something is new or when you're reintroducing something in a way that is your own ideology and trying to bring it into people and tell them, hey, this is actually possible, you kind of have to go through a longer battle than someone who is creating something that is off of something that has already been defined as useful. Um, so what I'm trying to do now is reintroducing computer arts in my own way. And I would want long term for TinType to spearhead the conversation of reintroducing computer arts as a tool that can be beneficial in the internet age for people to create things that they want to create or whatever it is that you have in your mind that you want to do the same way code is doing. Is how do we create something like that in the computer art space that could benefit the internet age as much as code is doing for the internet age today? So what I've been doing is basically trying to get that education out there first, Because until that education becomes, even if it's remotely popular, it becomes something that people can like listen to. So I have a talk with the brand studio team as Zapier September 25th. I've done that in different places. I've had like a few events here and there introducing it. On my Instagram, I started this little thing called rendering, where I'm also introducing people to the many things that computer arts can do in that way, which is also something that could pave the way for TinType to be able to say, okay, this is what we're doing. But I see TinType doing that education and also bringing people to that point of saying, hey, this is possible. The same way Elon did with telling you, hey, you're going to have an electric car. And everybody's like, this dude is crazy. And then it comes out. And now every company is jumping on creating electric cars because they now see, like, oh, this is possible. This is something that can be done. So I see that to be the path that we'll take. So once I recognize it, it's just like following that path.
How did you set up, like, how did you get those high level meetings with like Zapier and those type of level ones? What was your process? How'd you find them?
So very early when I was in college, before I think how old was I? Like 19. I joined this company. It was a social club in a way. It's called Built by Girls. So what they do is
Hmm.
they give girls who are in fashion, tech, design, and there's another one. I think there was another one. I can't remember that one. But they give you mentors. So every semester in school or every quarter, depending on your system, you get a mentor. So I got a bunch of them because I was taking it super, super seriously. And then I was just putting myself out there on LinkedIn and different things. And then I got this gig with LinkedIn when I was in school called Campus Editor. So it's like if you get it, talk about whatever it is that you, if you're love writing, talk about writing. If you love design, talk about design. So there was that trying to get people, hey, creatives, join LinkedIn. Then in school, so there's a lot of opportunity to network and also just put my portfolio out, create portfolios and put it out. So to be honest, some of them just came out of nowhere. Other times it was you see this opportunity on LinkedIn and you're like, hey, they're looking for speakers for this. I'm like, they have this thing I want to talk about, which is computer art. And then they tell you to explain yourself, explain, create a whole synopsis, send it, and they're like, oh, we love it. So that's kind of how I got it.
That's awesome. I think
Yeah.
there's so much power in that because I think people lots of times people are afraid to put themselves out there and they
Yeah.
just if you just go and do it,
Yeah.
it's amazing what doors open for you. So good on you for just taking the leap and doing it. That's freaking
Yeah.
awesome. So
Thank-
cool. Cool. So what's the one thing that the network can help you with?
I would say talking about TinType, the conversation about computer arts, I think if that conversation can be talked about more, or even if we have people that are even curious about it, I think it just brings up or opens the door for us to talk about it more, to put it out there more, and things of that nature. Um, yeah, like, and then having like a group or some type of support, people that are basically building the same thing, going through the same thing in the same phase that could give advice. I'm gonna be looking out for the podcast now because so many people, I'm pretty sure so many people have gone through so many things. So it's going to be beneficial to have a place where you could hear people's experiences and all of that, just so you know you're not alone.
That's awesome. And what is the best place for people to follow you?
On Instagram. So on Instagram, it's DOG THEOJI underscore. And on LinkedIn, it's just Daniela Uche-Oji.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on
Thank
the
you.
show, and I can't wait to follow along. I'll give you a follow on Instagram, and I got some people that I think you should meet, so I'll make some introductions after this too.
Thank you so much.
Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
This
day, and thanks for coming on.
You too. Great show, by the way.
Thank you.